Okay, first we're going to construct our binding strips. We're going to sew them all together end to end, but instead of making a straight seam, we're going to make a diagonal seam at 45 degrees by placing them right sides together, 90-degree angle, right sides together, and we're going to sew from corner to corner here at a 45-degree angle, here to here. If you're more comfortable marking that, you can do so. I like to just eyeball it because you know my motto, it's better to have something done than something absolutely perfect. We want to do the best jobs we can, but as I go, I'm going to go ahead and trim these. And so now we're going to just sew all 4 of these together in the same fashion. We're going to sew them right sides together. We're going to place them perpendicular. And you'll see that I'm leaving a little space on the top and the bottom edges. The purpose is that is the selvage, and I didn't want to take the time to go through and cut all the selvages off before we construct, so I just leave room and cut that off at the end. And that saves us a step. When we open that up and finger press it, we've got our binding strip is progressing nicely, and when we fold it in 2, we won't get that bulky. If we had it straight, there would be 4 layers of fabric instead of spread out like that. What we're going to do is fold the binding strip in half. And you can press these if you would feel more comfortable, but I don't see the need. We're going to take a little bit of a space and leave quite a bit for overlap in a minute when we get to the end of our quilt. This is the backing side of the quilt. You see on this side is our quilt top. This is the backing. And we're going to start with the backing and our fabric with the cut edge lined up in this direction. So the folded edge faces the inside of the quilt, and the cut edges are all together. And again, we're going to leave some space up here so that we can do the finishing overlap when we get to the end of our quilt. And we're just going to start any place. I like to start right before a corner because I like to turn a corner pretty early on in my binding process, and we'll show you about corners in just a second. So we line up our edges, our cut edges, and we begin to sew. I'm obsessed about this, about losing stitches, so I always go back and forth just to sort of lock in my seam. And I'm doing a scant 1/4 inch seam. I use the edge of my presser foot to help me with my measurement. This is a 1/4 of an inch from the center where the needle goes in to the edge of the foot, and I use that as a guide so that I can be accurate with my 1/4 inch seam. Now we come to the corner, and this is an interesting but very easy way to make a perfect mitered corner. We go all the way up. I'm going to show you first where the corner is. We go all the way up to about 1/2 an inch in front of the corner. My fingernail is at the corner. So we're going to go all the way up here, and I back up, and then I lift the presser foot, and I move my whole thing out of the way. Then I fold this all the way forward, and then all the way back again, keeping my seams lined up. And if you've pressed that, that'll make it a little bit easier, but it's not so bad either way. I fold it at a perfect triangle here, and then fold it back down again. And we want to line up the fold with the cut edge of the fabric. Do you see what that looks like? We want to line up the fold here and have this fold triangle run equal with our cut edge. Then we want to line up our edges here, lift this up, pivot the whole thing around, and we put our needle in at about 1/2 an inch from the back edge, and we start to sew. And I go back and forth over it just a little bit. Now, it is really important when we flip this over not to have sewn to the edge on either this seam or this seam. So leave that 1/2 of an inch from each edge so that we can make our mitered corner when we flip over the binding. So here we go. We're approaching the area we started with, and as you can see, here's our extra flap of fabric. So we're going to sew right up to it, leave a little space, and then I always do a little front and back. And now we're going to cut all of this and flip the fabric over. So we've left our flap, we've trimmed off a little edge, and we've left some space here to manipulate. Now I'm going to cut off quite a bit more here, and that's going to go in. We're going to fold this edge over so we don't have any frayed possibility of fraying, and then this lays right inside, and this goes over the top. And now we've encased in a little sleeve the edges of our binding, and I'm going to sew this all down now. Great. Now we're going to flip it over and do the top side. Now at this point, a lot of people like to hand stitch the top of the binding to the quilt top, and you can see this is the beautiful quilt top now. I do it by machine because, as you know, my motto is get it done, instant gratification. It's good to do your very best, but it's better to have a finished project than a perfect project. Unless you're sitting in front of the TV or something and have plenty of time to do the handwork, I just do it by machine. And what we're going to do is leave this edge here alone where we made our envelope, because we want to ease everything into where it has to be when we get around to the other side and finish top stitching. I'm going to start the top stitching just past our sleeve, and we fold it over, and see why we had the fold facing where it was on the other side, because now we have a perfect folded edge, and all we have to do is top stitch that down, and we're off. Top stitching our binding right up to it. And now we get to our corner, and we've got this fold on this side, and we're going to make the same dimple fold on this side. And with our fingers, just manipulate. We can go back and cut the threads in a minute. Just manipulate this perfect fold. And because we've left that unsewn underneath, we have a little room to manipulate. And we go right to the overlap here, and now we pivot. We pivot around that corner, and you know me, I'm going to take my extra little security stitches to ensure we got everything sewn down, and off we go. So, as you can see, we're on our quilt top now, and we're just top stitching down the row. We're folding our folded edge of our binding all the way around and enveloping these cut edges, and then top stitching it all down, and it's beautiful. We're coming to this corner, and we're going to fold it straight with the angle on the outside. Now look over here. We've got this perfect little fold here, and this. Then we're going to fold it back over the top of itself and see what we can do about getting that fold to come corner to corner edge. I'll clip off this thread in a minute. So we top stitch down to it and just catch that edge with our needle, and then we pivot. Now you know me, I have to have my security stitches, so I go forward and back a little bit just to make sure I've got everything sewn down, and then off we go down the line, and let me show you this beautiful corner. We've got our fold here, we're going to clip that thread off, and we've got our fold here, and now we've got a mitered corner that was super easy to make. And now we're getting down to the very end, and you can see this is our little pocket area. I've pinned it, so we've left it unsewn so that it can move, flex in and out a little bit to suit our purposes as we ease the seam together here as we finish. All we have to do is finish our top stitching right down to this point. I'm going to remove the pin. And we're going to sew right over it, ease right over it down to where we stopped our stitching, and then back stitch a couple of, and we're done. And there you see it. There's our little envelope of fabric, and it looks great on both sides. Fast, easy, and done. And here we have our finished baby quilt. Our log cabin block with featured fabrics in the center, our machine embroidered name to personalize it, our easy machine binding but darling and charming, something to use up and wear out.